Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Amy and I create videos on absolutely everything coloured pencil related. Welcome also to part 2 of the leopard eye tutorial series. Let's crack straight on and continue with this drawing. So in this next part what we're going to do is work on some of the fur around the outside of the eye. So we're going to work on the patches of fur directly around where we've previously done the eye, so underneath the eye and on top, and then we'll readjust some values and everything within the eye if we need to, and then we'll continue with the rest of the fur and then judge the overall piece. So to begin with, we're going to start how we did the previous part. So we're going to just gently erase some of this graphite, so just taking a larger eraser and gently brushing the eraser across your paper to try and lift up some of that graphite. So you don't want to erase too much, you don't want to erase too little either. So you want to just be able to see it when you're laying down colour. So I can just about see those marks. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So we're going to start our layering process for the fur. So we're going to use our warm grey one and our cold grey one. So again, we need to make sure that we have really sharp pencils. So make sure that you sharpen your cold and warm greys so they've got a really super fine point on there, just like these. And then what we're going to do is first of all lay down the warm grey one, and we're going to start on this section just here. And what I'm going to do is just hold the pencil quite far back and just shade in the direction that that fur is going in. So you'll notice on the reference photo that the fur is coming up. So that's the direction that we want to shade. So you want to move your pencil in that manner. Just reference your reference picture and make sure that your strokes and your shading are all going in the right direction. So as we come up and over the eye, you'll notice that the fur starts to come off in this direction. So it's coming towards the left hand side of the piece. So that's what we want to do with our pencil. When you're shading, when you're going back and forth, using very light pressure, you just want to angle your wrist or your pencil, whichever's most comfortable, or both if you prefer, and work in the direction that that fur is going in. So as you come up from the eye as well, you'll notice that the fur, instead of laying straight across, it starts to come up. So it comes up at like a 45-degree angle from the eye. And then as we come back around to this part, it goes up to pretty much vertically. So that's the kind of motion that you want to mimic with your shading. You just want to make sure that you're going with the direction that that fur is going in. If you was to go off at a bit of an odd angle, so perhaps on this one where it's laying pretty much horizontal, if you was to go vertical on this, it would look really unnatural, look really contrived, and it wouldn't look realistic at all, because if you look at pictures of fur and animals, you don't often find that you have bits of fur going off at weird angles, unless perhaps they're wet or maybe their fur is sticking up all over the place, perhaps they've got a bit of bedhead or something like that. You don't often find animals that actually look like that, so you want to try and keep in the same direction at all times. So as we come back around the bottom of the eye, we're doing exactly the same. You're following where that fur's going. Just look at your reference photo if you're unsure. Take a lot of time to study your reference photo if you're really unsure beforehand. The more confident you get with fur and how it lays and the anatomy of animals or whatever you're drawing, the more confident you'll get, and you won't have to reference your reference photo quite as much. But if you're new to it and you're a little unsure, then just continue to look at your reference photo as much as you need to. Don't feel as if you're not allowed to look at your reference photo at all. always reference your reference photo. Even if it's just a quick glance or you need a longer look, just always make sure that you're looking at it and that you're getting the marks and the fur direction and everything in exactly the right place. So we've got a nice layer of the warm grey one down there. Covered a really substantial area of that. So what I'm doing now is just going over with a secondary layer in certain places where it needs a little bit of an extra coverage. Still following all of that fur direction. Like so. So then what we're going to do is pick up our cold grey one, and on the reference photo you'll notice that there are some cooler toned looking areas, and that's mainly around this side of the eye. So it comes up and around this area. You've got a little bit of a cold patch here and a little few cold patches around here. So the cold patches are identifiable by the sort of blue tone that you get when you look at it. So if you squint at your reference picture, you'll see that you have some warmer tones. So the more of the warmer tones are more noticeable in the darker areas where you've got this fur down here. But when you squint and look, you can see the difference between those warmer tones here and the cooler tones up and below the eye and just up here as well. So if you have a little squint at your reference picture, see where those cooler tones are and then add down your cold grey one in those areas. So again, you want to make sure that you're using very light shading, following that fur direction. I'm going to add a nice layer of the cold grey one down. And on the bottom here, it doesn't really start until you get to this sort of area, sort of this patch. So I'm just going to add a very slight touch here just to start off the blending transition, like that. So these warmer toned fur areas are going to need a bit of a sort of creamy tone, so that's where our buff titanium is going to come in. So you can also use your ivory or cream if you don't have buff titanium, just any really light soft coloured creamy looking pencil. So make sure that you sharpen it so it's got a nice sharp point, and then we're just going to lay this colour down in those areas where we didn't put down any of the cold grey one. So this is going to help blend everything together, going to help to burnish and blend. So again, you're just using light pressure on your pencil, just going back and forth, following that fur direction. I just need to move these pencils out the way. So you're following the fur direction. Making sure that you blend into those darker areas as well. Okay, so it doesn't look too much different to just adding the one layer of the warm grey one, but you do have that subtle difference between those warm and cold areas. So now we're going to start to build up some of the fur strokes and tones within the fur. We're going to start here. So for this we're going to use two main colours, that's the burnt ochre and the Beaster pencil. So these are the same sorts, or the same colours that we've used within the eye here, so we're tying everything together by using the same colours in the fur. So what we're doing here is putting down our burnt ochre. We're putting this where we can see those darker marks, so just above the eye here, just above this pupil. And then as we come up towards this black spot or stripe. So at the moment we're just shading back and forth, just trying to get a nice little lay down of colour. Just trying to blend everything in as well. And just bringing some of this colour down here. We've got this really light bleached out area just by the eye right here. So we're just going to try and keep that free of any of the mid-tones for now. Just add down this, just avoiding that area. Then we're going to switch to the Beaster. Just go over these areas, especially where they're darker. But with this time, instead of just shading, we're also going to add a few fur strokes to try and get the illusion that that fur is really nice and soft. So you just want to use your pencil and make some very small lines and bring that into your base layer here. So we will blend this out in a second. So you just want to switch between these two pencils, just build up a nice sort of orange tone just here. You can also use that nice light yellow ochre colour, and you can glaze a little bit of that over to give the fur a little bit of a yellow tinge. It's also going to help to blend everything out as well. So you'll notice that there are also some darker brown marks, and that's where our nougat pencil is going to come in. And you can see these darker marks coming off of this eye area. So all we're going to do is add some really dark fur marks coming off of this eye section, going in the direction that the fur is going in. So on this bit here, the fur is coming this way, so it's coming off at this ever such a slight angle. And that's how we're going to add that fur coming off of this eye. Going to add it going in that direction. You can also use your dark sepia to get a really nice dark colour as well. So switch to dark sepia. You always want to make sure that your pencils are really sharp for this as well. So you'll notice that we haven't actually used any kind of black pencil or anything for any of this, and I don't tend to use a lot of black in my drawings. I like to try and create my own tone with dark sepia and a bunch of other colours, just try and get a nice rich tone rather than a flat one from the black. So we're just going to very, very lightly add a few fur lines over this. So bringing a few of these fur lines into this bleached patch of fur here. Just very, very lightly. And then on here you'll notice that I've got some markings here to depict where some of these really kind of dark eyelashes are. So to begin that, what we're going to do is start with our nougat. And we're going to follow the shapes that we can see that these eyelashes, this eyelid area is making. So just mapping everything out with the nougat to begin with. And then we're going to go over with the dark sepia, really darken everything up. I'm also just making some fur strokes with this, coming off of this eyelid here. You can build up your cold grey one as well. You can really layer that and put a bit of pressure down on the pencil to get a nice grey tone come off of that. You can also blend it with the nougat to get a really nice grey brown tone too. So you'll notice that directly on the eye here it's quite orange, which got some sort of orange eyelids, so just adding a little bit of that burnt ochre down. And then switching back to that nougat and adding in all of those hairs and things for the eyelid. So you can see I'm just mapping out some individual hairs. And then I'm just going to go over them with the dark sepia pencil. Especially these really dark ones that you can see, there's just a few really, really dark ones. And then we're going to blend them out with some very, very light shading of the dark sepia on this area to get a nice, really light grey tone. So you just want to use the colours and the pressures with your pencil to build up a nice tone. By doing it this way, you'll often find that you don't necessarily have to have a whole bunch of colours to work from. You can actually make and mix colours yourself just by layering your pencils in a certain way. It takes a little bit of practice, but it can be done. You just have to be patient with your drawing. And it will get there. So, Just continuing with building up this fur. So on this sort of colder looking area, what I'm going to do is just push a little bit harder with the cold grey 1 to get in a few fur strokes there. I can also go over a little bit with some dark sepia just to add a little bit of a darker tone. Can always tone it down and blend it in by going over with the white or one of the lighter colours as well. So as we work our way around, you want to bring your fur strokes down and around. So this area here where you've got this line, I've left it off from earlier, that needs to be shaded with some dark sepia. It's going to be quite a nice grey tone. So just shading some dark sepia down, then we're going to blend it with the Caran d'Ache Luminance white pencil. And then we're just going to go back over with the dark sepia. And then blend it out once more. And then we're going to continue with doing the fur. So at the moment I'm using the nougat and just adding in some very, very faint fur lines. See, this bit might look quite white, but it's actually got quite a lot of grey and orange and other tones on it. It could also add a little bit of green in there. Just going to add a very small amount of green just there, just glazing it over, so just using the side of my pencil just to add a little hint of green there. And then we're going to turn our attention to the bottom half or the lower lid of the eye now. So for that, what we're going to do is use our yellow pencil to begin with. I'm just going to gently glaze a little bit of colour over this, so just give it a really quite a nice soft yellow hue. We can always blend it out if it goes too dark with the white, which I might do anyway, just to knock it back, soften it a little bit. So just adding this where we've got that darker tone, more sort of in this area here. I'm going to use the white pencil just to blend it out. So just blending that out ever so slightly. And then I'm going to go in with the nougat pencil. I'm going to add some of those brown fur lines. So I'm going to start with the inner corner of the eye here. Just need to resharpen it. You need to make sure that you have a super sharp pencil for this. So just adding in some fur lines, just building up the colour ever so slightly with the nougat pencil. Just bringing the pencil around this side as well, we've got some nice brown tones back here. And we're also going to use the dark sepia pencil just to add a little bit of dark tone to this here. So all I've done is just followed the reference photo, just added in those fur lines where I think they're going. And then we need to also add some darker lines coming off of this just to blend it into the surrounding area so it doesn't just look like it's stuck on there. You always need to make sure that you blend everything out. So for instance, this area just needs a little bit more work. And then we're going to add this dark patch in here with this dark sepia pencil. So all we're doing is just building up that fur. Going between the nougat and the dark sepia pencils just to try and add in as much fur detail around the eye as possible. In a minute what we're going to do, once we've done this little patch of fur here, what we're going to do is just readjust a few areas within the eye, just sharpen them up a little bit, give everything a little bit of added depth. And then we can continue with the rest of the fur around the outside, which is actually fairly easy. It might look quite daunting because it's like full of spots and everything, but it's actually a fairly easy rendering. So just making sure that I blend everything out. adding these really, really dark lines around the bottom edge of the eye. So you can see that the eye sort of is starting to blend into the fur a little bit, and that's exactly what we want. So just on this edge here where this fur starts to meet this very first spot, we just need to add a little bit of orange. You can see a little bit of an orange tinge there. So you're just using the burnt ochre. And then remembering to blend that out into the rest of the fur as well. So you can really start to see this eye starting to take shape now. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to add a few fur lines down here. What we're going to do is then readjust the eye just a little tiny bit. So this bit here needs a little bit of shading on mine. Yours might be fine, just use your judgment. Make adjustments only where necessary and where you feel like it absolutely needs it. Don't make unnecessary changes. If you think it looks fine, then just leave it as it is. But if you need to make any changes or adjustments or anything, then make them. I always find that as I start to add more fur and colour around the outside, that everything in the eye tends to get a little bit lighter. So I just like to go in and just readjust it here and there. So that I get everything right. So make sure that all the contrasts and values are correct. I'm just ever so slightly adjusting the shape of the eye here. So as I've used light layers, I only need to use a little bit of pressure of white just to cover it up, and that's all I'm doing, just covering up this little bit. We're using the white pencil, then I'm going to shade over with the nougat just to blend that in and adjust, then go back over with the dark sepia just to readjust that new shape of the eye there. So the rest of it I'm pretty happy with. Quite happy with the rest of that there. So this highlighted section here, what we're actually going to do with that now is just add a layer of cold grey 1. And there's a little bit of a blue tint to the very top edge of that. So what we're going to do is use our Delft blue and make a very, very small little spot there. And then just very lightly shade over the top section. It's just a very small detail, but it will make all the difference when we've completed our eye. So now what we can do is go in and do the rest of the fur. So what I'm going to do for this one is start on the top here and then do the bottom. So for the top we need to use our embossing tool or sharp white pencil or something to indent the paper to create these whiskers or eyebrows, whatever you want to call them. And this is where the Tombow eraser comes in as well. So with the Tombow eraser, I like to completely erase the whisker lines. Get rid of the eraser residue as well. And then with my smallest one, because this drawing is actually quite small, I like to then just use it the same way as I would use a pencil and indent the paper in one smooth line to create the whisker, flicking at the end so it tapers off at the end. So same with this one. Doesn't matter if you don't get them 100% correct, just in some sort of general position that they're in on the reference photo will be fine. So then with the thicker end, I like to make them a little bit thicker at the base of the hair. So I just follow that channel or groove which I've created and go halfway along the whisker line to create a thicker base here, and then it gradually tapers off to get thinner. So then what we do, when we add colour back over, the colour will completely go over this, so it'll act like a bit of a resist. You won't get any colour go in that groove, and it will leave a nice shiny white line. So we need to get rid of some of the graphite up here, so again using our larger eraser and just brushing it over. Just like that. We're going to work on this small section first. And then we're going to put down our base layers. So the base layers again are going to be the warm grey one and the cold grey one. And we're going to add the warm grey one all over this in the direction that the fur is going in. So look at your reference photo, see which direction it's going in. Make sure that you move your pencil to any position where it changes direction. So if it suddenly flicks up, as it seems to do the more you get around here, then just move your pencil and work it in that direction. So you'll see as we layer this down that it will avoid those embossed lines and we get some nice shiny white whiskers. So once you've put down the warm grey one down, we're going to go over with the cold grey one. Again, adding this to those colder areas. So if you need to refresh your mind on where they are, just squint at your reference picture. They'll pop out at you. They're quite blue toned. So add this colour, the cold grey one, to those areas of your drawing. Okay, so then we're going to use the buff titanium and we're going to add this to the warmer areas. This time, however, instead of going over the darker areas that we've mapped out, so you can see them because you can ever so slightly see the graphite lines showing through, we're going to avoid the really dark areas with this pencil, just add it around them. You don't have to worry about avoiding them completely. If you go ever so slightly in them, it's not going to matter. Just want to make sure that you don't add a large layer of colour down. Okay, so once you've got your base layers down, they look quite rough. Then we can start to fill in some colour. Now there's not actually much sort of the gingery tone left in this area, so all we need to do is give a little hint of it in some of the warmer areas with the yellow ochre. So on this side of the face where it's a little darker still. And again, we're going to blend this out with some of the white pencil as well, so don't worry if it's looking too yellow. But majority of this fur is going to be created just by using some fur lines with the Beast pencil and the Nougat pencil. You can add a little bit of the burnt ochre to this yellow as well. I'm going to start to do some fur lines because there's some slight orange fur lines just flicked into this black spot here. So I'm going to try and flick those in there and then blend it out a little bit to the rest of the fur. Again, if we go too orange or we need to blend it any more, then we can just use the white pencil or any kind of light coloured pencil. So we're going to take the Nougat here and just build up a very light layer of these dark spots with the Nougat pencil. So just making sure that we use a light layer to get the shape in. Then we're going to go over with the dark sepia. So we're going to add all of the dark spots first in exactly the same way as that. So find where your dark spots are, add the Nougat down very, very lightly so you get the nice general shape of them, and then we're going to go over with that dark sepia. And then we can add some fur strokes to the lighter areas of the fur as well. So spend some time mapping out these areas. Don't rush yourself. Okay, and then this last patch here. So you just want to make sure that you get these spots spot on. Okay, so once you've done that, you can go over with your dark sepia and start to fill those in. So with these ones down here, what we've got is some overlapping orange fur. So what we're going to do is just use our dark sepia and we're going to make small lines coming into that orange fur so it looks like it's slightly segmented. So you want to work backwards into the fur rather than going forwards into the fur. And then as we come up, you can shade this in. And then as we get towards the outer edges of the fur once more, you can start to flick the black fur, or the black spotted fur, into the surrounding areas. So instead of working down into the fur to try and get this orange fur to look as if it's segmented in here, you work in the other way. So you work back, going in the direction that the fur is going in, not backwards, if that makes sense. So you'll notice that your spots tend to blend into one another, into the surrounding fur, rather than just being a stuck-on shape. Everything, all the fur strokes and everything are all blended out, so you just want to make sure that everything is nice and blended. You don't have any harsh edges. You want to keep everything nice and soft. You want to keep the realistic look of the fur going. So this is where a sharp pencil comes in really handy as well, because then you can get some really fine lines on this section here. So then we can make them appear a lot more orange just by shading over the very tips of them where it meets that black fur. It's obviously a lot darker. And then using your nougat pencil you can create some lighter lines and bring them even further down into the fur just to blend it out a little bit more. So using the same technique, coming down the fur, you can blend it all together and get a really nice furry look. To make it even darker, what you can do is add a little bit of delft blue in there. So give it a little bit more of a character, a bit more vibrancy in there. And then go back over with your dark sepia once more, again making sure you use those fur lines to really mimic the softness and the texture of the fur. I'm going to get it nice and dark. Like so. So you want to do exactly the same as that in each of these spots. So what you want to do is make sure that you bring your pencil stroke backwards into the fur and then upwards into the fur as well. And make sure you blend it out with your nougat pencil too. So you just want to make sure that you work over multiple areas. So keep going over with your pencils until you're happy. If you're using light layers, you can always go in with a white pencil to lighten everything up, remember? So if you need to, you can sharpen up your white pencil. Get a really nice, super sharp point, and then go in and really highlight a few key areas if you need to. You can also use the white pencil to drag some white fur back into your dark fur, very, very lightly. Make it look nice and soft. So again, you want to make sure, if you need to give it a little bit of extra depth, you can add some blue, go back over with your dark sepia. Just helps to give it a little bit more of a impact. So remember, coming down into your fur, blending it into the rest of the fur as well, don't forget. Remember to always sharpen your pencil, so if you feel like it's getting a little bit blunt, then just give it a quick sharpen. So the fur's really starting to come on now. It does take quite a while to fill in all of these spots and get it right, but it's a really easy process. It's really quite nice to render. It doesn't take a lot of thinking about either. You can just sort of map out your shapes and then get on and do the darker areas. I always find working on this kind of fur and doing this sort of technique really quite therapeutic. Just remember that you always need to blend your fur out and create fur lines in the light coloured fur as well. You don't just want to leave it naked. Got to add a bit of texture to the whole areas. Otherwise it's just going to look like all of your spots of your leopard are just stuck on, when in fact they're not. it's all nice and smoothly blended out. So the last couple spots now. So you can see the fur's starting to really take shape. It's looking really nice and fluffy. Got quite a lot of form going on as well. So just blending everything out now, making sure that I add some texture to the lighter areas. So I'm just using that nougat pencil to add that texture. And a little bit of the dark sepia as well, just to add a few spots here and there. So I'm just going to switch to the cold grey 1 and add a few lines with some hard pressure of that cold grey 1, just to try and get in some darker grey tone, and interlace that with some dark sepia as well, just very, very lightly. Until I'm happy with how that clump of fur is looking. So I'm quite happy with that. I can just adjust it here and there, add any white hairs if I need to with the white pencil, so you can introduce some white hairs coming back over this dark fur so it looks even more fluffy. Looks a little bit more natural like that. So with this you need to make sure you've got a nice sharp white pencil like so. So you have to push quite hard when you're doing that as well. So what we can do next is move on to the other areas of fur. So we can move on to doing this corner here. This is a relatively easy corner, just a few spots there. Most of it's sort of this nice golden colour as well, so we get to introduce a few more of the burnt ochre, nougat and Bista colours. So that's the bit that we're going to do next. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of this tutorial series. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure you stay tuned for part 3 in this series. Don't forget to tag me in your work in progress photos on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll feature some of those in some upcoming videos in the new year. I'm so eager to see how you have got on with this tutorial so far. I will see you in the next part. Bye!